Probably when I was pregnant the first time. I was 19 years old. I'd already lived in Oklahoma City for a while. I had already had a lot of exposure to other Native American people. And in greeting, when you see another Native-looking person, you ask, "What tribe are you?" And for me, I could never fully, with conviction, say, "I am such and such tribe." I had oral history on my mother's side that we're Navajo, on my father's side that we're Apache, but we were always suppressed. We were not allowed to say that. In the state of Texas, until the 1990s, it was legal to kill an Apache if you felt threatened by them. So our family taught us to suppress the fact that we were Native American. So when I was pregnant, I decided I want to learn more. I want to know who we are, where we came from, why we're here, everything. Because I knew the European side. My last name is Cortez. So I had to learn the horrific history of that to defend my own name. And same thing with the Apache side, I feel. Apache are very denigrated in Hollywood, and books about almost every book you pick up about an Apache has something negative to say. So I feel that's my second round of learning to defend who we are and who we were. You know, I just read a book that was written by Kristela Cortez, which was also my grandpa's name, but some different person. He was a Navy sailor with the Spanish crown. He went around Texas all the way up to New Mexico, Arizona, and California to write maps, essentially. And one of the things that he said was, Apaches actually like peace. And that stuck with me. Like, how odd is it to say these people actually like peace, you know, because of what we were taught, even in the 1800s, you know. I started with a few cousins who had been involved in the San Jose Mission Genealogy Day. And a few years back, one of the speakers sent out a list of all the sacramental records from Spanish colonial era in San Antonio. And that just blew my mind, to see names of my actual ancestors listed with their tribe, their age, when they got married, when they got baptized, when they passed away. It really put a fire in me. You know, why didn't we know these specifics? You know, we know this is the history of Davy Crockett. We know the history of the Alamo, but we don't know the history of the people who live there. Last year was significant. Two of my nieces, my great niece and one of my daughters, came to Genealogy Day. And, you know, after speaking to other descendant groups and seeing our own records and taking the tour, my niece just looks at me with tears in her eyes and she says, "Now I know who I am." You know, all these years where I'm with my coworkers and they ask, "What tribe are you?" and all we say is, "Texas," you know, Texas. Now I know exactly who I am, and I wouldn't have known that without you. So I feel urgency to let people know. We have an adoptee actually that not directly related to me, but I've been helping a couple of other tribal members help her find her way back. And in December, she was able to meet her birth mother. And that's just amazing to me, that an adoptee, you know, who had no idea where she came from, was able to find her lines through those Spanish colonial records and then find her birth mother. And that resonates to today. A lot of people don't know there's Apache in Texas. A lot of people don't realize we were not all either killed or sent to the other side of the border or sent to reservations. Some of us were able to keep our freedom. I grew up in an area where everyone looked, spoke, and acted and talked and dressed like me. So I thought we were American. I thought we were, we were raised in a very strong military family, so, we're just American. Now, when I moved to Oklahoma City, I was 15 and my mom told me to go get a job, so I just started applying for jobs. The first place I applied for a job, McDonald's, they asked me for my green card. I didn't even know what a green card was at that point. And so that's where I experienced racism. In Oklahoma in 1988, most of the Hispanic people that were there were either immigrants or the children of immigrants. Once they figured out I didn't have an accent after speaking to me for a while, then that's when the what tribe are you question would come up. And that was never like in a hostile way. It's just, oh, okay, so you're not from Mexico, you must be Indian,
And that was in the 80s?
That was in the 80s, yeah. I do know, because of my genetics, we have, European, we have Native American, we have African, we have French, we have all it's literally the story of colonization in my DNA. So I'm sure that that's not off by too much.
Right.
But I didn't grow up in that San Antonio. I grew up in the San Antonio where if you lived in the South Side, you were trash. If you lived in the North Side, you were a rich Mexican. That's it.
Which side did you live in?
Trash. But it was awesome. I had a great childhood. If you lived in the East Side, you were black. If you lived in the West Side, you were probably military. So, I grew up in a very cut and paste San Antonio. And even today, when I go over there, there's some people that are very mean still and very racist. My kids were not allowed to turn food away. My kids were not allowed to make fun of people for what they look like or be, of course, if you're afraid of someone, you're afraid of someone, but don't be afraid because of what you see. I remember very clearly as a child, probably 6, 7 years old, my parents were racist. My parents were very racist against black people. And I remember as a young child being out in a store and having a black child touch me, and I started crying because I thought my mom was going to kill me because a black child touched me. And I could feel that fear now, because that's something that my mom and dad said, if we ever see you with a black person, we're going to boil your hand. Don't touch a black person, we're going to boil your hand. Why would you tell a child that, So I did everything I could to raise my children the complete opposite way. Because like you can see, it's traumatizing, even 40 years later. There's a treaty between the United States and Canada where their First Nations people can use their tribal card to go and work and live on both sides of the border. I had no idea there was anything like that. There's nothing like that for our Hispanic indigenous people. And we're all indigenous. When Texas became its own country, half of our people stayed on the south side of the Rio Grande. Half of our people stayed on this side. We don't have any kind of identification that would allow us to even come visit family. And some of those families are still very close. So I feel if Texas Apache are federally recognized, that may lead to a bringing together a family that has been separated for no reason. I was born and I was raised by my mother in Tejano society. Cooked Tex-Mex, dressed Tex-Mex, everything talked Tex-Mex, everything is Tex-Mex. But genetically, I'm indigenous, so I'm trying to mesh that. Yeah, there are indigenous Mexicans, but we're not from Mexico. It's so complex. So I think that knowing your line, knowing and having a paper trail, who each ancestor was, where each ancestor came from, I feel like that's integral right now. I've been removed from my culture for so long, I don't even know my language. I didn't know who my elders were until 2 years ago, you know. So for me, everything falling into place at the time of my life where I need it the most, when I got sick, is almost mystical. It's almost mystical. It's weird.
Can you expand on that a little bit?
I always tell people I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual. I was raised in a very, very conservative Christian home. So as soon as I could run away from that, I did. I explored all kinds of religions, Eastern religion, Western religion, Native American stuff, and it's so much simpler than it has to be. When I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in December, it was kind of a shock, but not, because my mother had it and her brother, and it's big in my mom's side of the family. But I wasn't expecting it, you know. It was just sudden. But because of the family that I've built in the last 2 years and relationships I built in the last 2 years, I've been surrounded by people who are peaceful, who know the natural medicines of our land, you know. One of my elders is a herbalist that she's been growing and creating her own herbs for 30 years. So she's sending me a package of teas and stuff. It's a very different way of thinking. And it's peace, for me it's peaceful. It put a huge halt to my life. Totally unexpected, like I said. I had been getting screened about every 9 months or so since my mom was diagnosed. When she was diagnosed in 2017, they offered me genetic testing to see if I carried the gene mutation, which I do. So right away, my doctors at the VA started the screening process, and about every 9 months or so, I'd go in and have all kinds of stuff done. So in December, I went in to get my lab work done for that particular round, and that was like the first couple days of December, because that weekend, December 5th, I met my daughter in Dallas to watch Hamilton. Fantastic. It was amazing. I mean, we were all dolled up and, you know, all excited, get on the little train in Deep Ellum to ride down to the theater and taking all kinds of fancy pictures, and it was a great weekend. That Monday I got back was my initial appointment for the lab work, and right away they said, your liver enzymes are off the charts. We need to send you in for CT scan. So literally between the first weekend of December and my birthday, December 17th, I had got so jaundiced, my eyes were like neon yellow. It looked like somebody took a highlighter to them. So that was the first big decision I had to make, because they wanted to admit me right away. But my daughter graduated from college December 18th. And I'm like, y'all aren't taking that away from me. So, you know, there I go with my big brave face and, you know, glasses so nobody could see my eyeballs. And, you know, they gave us almost front row seating at her graduation. We had our nice little graduation party and came back home. And by the end of January, I had had major surgery to remove the tumor. So, yeah, it's changed my life, and it put a stop to a lot of things. You know, I missed the family gathering in Bracketville because I was recovering. You know,
What has changed for you?
I think emotionally and spiritually, I think it's really brought me closer to my family. my nieces and nephews and my kids. It's been hard watching David because I see that he suffers. You know, he doesn't show it, but you know, there's a couple times that I've heard him crying, and that breaks my heart. You know, we met 25 years ago. When I was pregnant with my second daughter, I lived down here. I lived in Killeen with my parents, and I worked for a Cedar Park Police Department. So that's when we met. We were both in other relationships, so we just developed this friendship over 25 years and finally decided to give it a shot. So it's almost like fucking cancer came and trying to snatch that from me, you know? I'm like, I'm not going to let that happen, you know? And the statistics you see for pancreatic cancer are so awful. But I'm a support group joiner, so I've seen that people have survived 15, 20 years after having surgery and chemo, you know? So I know it's possible, but it makes me angry. It makes me angry. I hope to give my lost relatives a way back. I hope to help my family and my children and grandchildren have a more firm belief in who they are, know where we come from, know what our people have contributed to Texas society, and just really bring awareness that we're a beautiful mix of so many different things. Even though there's been sad history, there's also been very good history. My personal family descended from one of the first founding families of Mission San Jose in San Antonio, Lipan Apache. And from them, they had children who fought in the Alamo. They had children who fought Civil War. They've had children who have served as governors and mayors of their little particular. Each mission was considered a little town. We have people who have worked as scouts for the Texas Rangers, and up, you know, into my generation and generations following as well. We're all very, very military oriented, and a lot of people don't realize that, you know, that we have been a part of Texas since before it was ever marked as Texas. But yeah, I think just bringing our history to light so more people could find their way back.